Here's an idea. Bitcoins and unusual hats are changing currency. In the way the US has the buck, Brazil has the conto, and Canada has the loonie, the internet has the Bitcoin. The Bitcoin is a decentralized digital peer-to-peer cryptocurrency. It doesn't rely on any physical note, and it isn't regulated, controlled, or anything really by a central issuing authority like the Federal Reserve or Uncle Moneybags. But because no one is in charge, that doesn't mean you can just make infinite money. In order for a currency to have value, it has to be scarce. You can only print, mine, or mint a certain amount. Bitcoins are generated by networked computers solving complex cryptographic puzzles. It's sort of like you're asking your computer to solve a Rubik's Cube with a side for every color of the visual spectrum. This hard work makes Bitcoins and maintains not only scarcity, but market stability. I know, it's pretty cray and a little hard to explain quickly, so if you want to know more, we'll put some links in the place where links go. Now, state currencies, even loonies, can be exchanged for Bitcoins and back again, making it fully convertible. So you can spend your Bitcoins on all kinds of stuff. I mean, mostly internet stuff, like hosting and backup services, but also candy and cupcakes. Who doesn't love cupcakes? And you can do this even though they're just ones and zeros generated by a computer on a network somewhere. Bitcoins are traded by people who have all agreed that they have a value. And so, ta-da, they do. Which actually makes them a lot like hats. Well, sort of. Bear with me for a second. About 2 years ago, an analyst estimated that Valve's online first-person shooter Team Fortress 2 was worth about $22 million. Not in revenue, not in terms of IP, but in hats. Digital tradable hats. You see, in 2009, Valve introduced one hat for each of the TF2 player classes. You know, spruce up your character, give them some style. But since then, they've introduced over 250 more hat types, ranging from pretty mundane hat type hats to some really weird and, more importantly, rare digital headgear. The rarest of the rare headgear is called unusual, and as is normally the case with rare and unusual things, people want them a lot. And so where do they get them? Good question. They get them from crates. Crates can only be opened if you have a key which you have to, ready, pay real money for. So about 1% of the time you use your it costs money key to open your crate, you will get an unusual hat. Now, if it wasn't already interesting and complicated, here's where it gets really interesting and complicated.
Hey, what is going on here?
Players can trade hats, and all other items for that matter, but we're talking about rare and valuable hats, which no one's gonna wanna just give away. It's gonna cost you. Trades are paid for with PayPal and sometimes even Bitcoin, but many trades are paid for with an in-game material called refined metal. Remember those crates? The other 99% of the time that there isn't an unusual hat in there, you get weapons or a sandwich or socks. This stuff can be scrapped and combined to create refined metal. But remember, you paid money to open your crate. This gives refined metal a value, and because it's tradable between players in-game, it becomes a peer-to-peer digital currency for buying hats. $22 million worth of hats.
Yeah, I found this backstage, oversized hat. It's funny.
The really great part, though, is that the source of that value, the crates, are dropped at a rate determined by the amount of time a player is in-game. Sounds a little familiar, doesn't it? Add to this the fact that items, much like Bitcoins, can be tracked and timestamped, and that while they are generated by a central network, they are effectively traded freely between players. And we've maybe made the case for a second hugely successful alternate digital currency. Now, this whole thing really indicates some mind-blowing stuff about money. Let's not mince words. Bitcoins and refined metal, and I'm sorry, hats, no matter how unusual, are worthless. Don't get me wrong, the dollar and the euro and the yen might also be worthless in that they have no intrinsic value like gold, but they are the fuel for global exchanges and markets and economies with widely traded and accepted physical manifestations. No one will refuse a dollar because it's not worth anything. But really, weirdly, it's not. This is just some cloth with ink on it, and debit cards and credit cards are just further abstractions. The gold standard was abandoned long ago, replaced by an artificial scarcity maintained by some very smart people in some very tall buildings somewhere important. But we have this weird ingrained cultural make-believe time where we all pretend that this thing has some value, which it does, but it's because we pretend, not because it has any intrinsic value. Dollars are one kind of worthless. Bitcoins and refined metal are a different kind of worthless. worthless. They're like baseball cards or the stuff that they find on Storage Wars. They can only be converted into lunch money after finding someone who agrees, yes, the Blizzardy Stately Steel Toe is worth $30. But that doesn't change the fact that 2 years ago, the equivalent of 60% of Tuvalu's GDP was wrapped up in America's #1 war-themed hat simulator, and that Bitcoin is the world's most popular alternative currency, worth over $200 million US and growing. But you're right, no one is going to be buying dinner or a car with hats, or even Bitcoins for that matter, anytime soon. But these currencies, especially Bitcoins, prove something. Both about the growth of internet culture with a capital C, I mean, if Tuvalu gets a currency, why not the internet? And also about our willingness to take matters into our own hands. The DIY mentality has gone from desks and cars to computers, biology, chemistry, and now currency. If our currency and our credit system is already ones and zeros, but unreliable and confusing ones and zeros after years of tinkering and turmoil, why not design a new currency with all of the benefits, but none of the baggage? And yeah, maybe this is just a flash in the pan reaction to the global economic sad party and a growing distrust of government bodies to maintain a stable currency. But even if it is, it seems to work. And as Daniel Webster said, a disorganized currency is one of the greatest political evils. Which means maybe this sound is the sound of orderly progress. What do you guys think? Do alternative currencies have real world worth, or should they just stay in video games? Let us know in the comments. And if you subscribe, I might send you a sandwich. More good news, everyone! Comments! Let's see what you had to say about Futurama and transhumanism. So first and foremost, superhero enthusiast, that one guy named X, and a bunch of other people pointed out that throughout the episode, we sort of conflated abolitionism and transhumanism, and we should have made it a lot clearer that not all transhumanists are abolitionists, and not all abolitionists are transhumanists, and that, like any label or belief system, there are people within those groups that differ from each other. So thank you for correcting us. Thanks for letting us know. To Hey Jacose, no joke, I have been saving bottle caps for the nuclear post-apocalypse, so I think we're on the same page. Son of Sithwada, Dalton Loney, and a couple other people point out that you can't really discount parts of transhumanism for messing with human nature, because human nature is such a weird, fluid concept anyways, and that if we are evolving, the thing that we turn into might be so different that human nature isn't even really a thing anymore. Ethan Quinn makes a really solid point that not all ambition is towards the goal of being happy, and that the neutral planet itself, even as neutral as they are, still has goals and ambitions. Kyle McKittrick points out that Futurama and transhumanism are not mutually exclusive, and that Futurama actually paints a picture that most transhumanists would be totally on board with. In response to WC Pointy 60's response to Jane Deese, this I think is a really interesting thing, because like if I have a headache, I'm in pain, and then if I don't have a headache anymore, I'm not experiencing pleasure, I'm just in not pain. So pain and pleasure or pain and joy are not necessarily opposites in that sense. But the way that we think about pain and pleasure, our emotional experience of it is usually we want pleasure and we do not want pain, and so in some sense they are opposites of one another. And maybe what we're running into is a kind of cognitive difficulty related to not being able to describe those feelings appropriately. Elaine Scarry actually wrote a book about this called The Body in Pain. It's about this whole phenomenon, and it's really good. You should check it out. To I Like Cereal X, I have not yet evolved past the point of having human emotions, so yes, it most certainly did.